Okay, I'd like to point out what I consider to be two fatal flaws in Bart Erhman's arguments. Okay, for example, Bart will say, well, did Jesus carry the cross or didn't he? Well, it depends on which gospel you want to believe, whereas Matthew said he did, but John didn't mention it, or said Simon carried it. So did he or didn't he? Depends on what gospel you read. Okay, now, let me give you an example of contemporary language. Let's say I want to go to the picture show. So I call a couple of my friends, let's say Mark and Luke, and I call up those guys and say, hey, let's go to the picture show down at the mall. We say, great. We get there to the movie theater, find out we're half hour early. So Mark says, hey, let's go grab a burger. Great. So we go grab a burger and we go to the show. Then we come out of the show and Mark texts his friends, hey, had a burger with my buddies. It was great. But Luke texts his friends, we went to the picture show. It was a great movie. Well, now, which text is correct? Did they have a hamburger or did they go to the movie? Now, if you follow Bart Erhman's logic, well, it depends on which text you want to believe, when the fact is, it's both. Okay? Now, that's the first fatal flaw in Erhman's arguments that I see. The second fatal flaw is that when you pull up a verse out of, say, John, and you bring it in and say, well, look, they went and had a hamburger, then they went to the movie. It's both, Bart. We know that all the Gospels are abridged. Bart comes back typically and says, no, you can't do that because you're just taking part of this book and part of that book and you're mishmashing them together, and you can't just mishmash all the books together because then you just got to mishmash everything. What? Bart, how did you arrive at your argument in the first place? You're telling me that I can't take a verse out of this book and a verse out of that book and compare them, but yet you arrived at your argument, did Jesus carry the cross or didn't he? Well, it depends on what verse you want to read. He started his argument by taking a verse out of this book and a verse out of that book and comparing them. But when I do that, he says, no, you can't mishmash them together. Well, what are you doing, Bart? So those are the two fatal flaws, or at least a couple of them, that I see in Bart Erhman's logic and his presentation of that. Okay?